Welcome to Corporate Services meeting, hopefully the 14th of April 2023. Declare this meeting open at 9 a.m. I'll start off with applications for attendance via video link.
Neil received, Mr. Chair. All committee members are present.
Yep, so then we have no apologies. Disclosure of interest.
Neil received so far, but councillors can still lodge them if they wish. No.
And public participation.
There's no public participation registered for today.
All right, well, having nothing else in that space, we'll move on to Mr. Phelps with his financial summary and investment report, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We'll just go to the first report, the 4.1 report on page 3. Just down the bottom there with the financial information summary. As you can see, there's a significant positive variance to our budget of 5.1 million compared to only a couple of $100,000 from the previous month. So included in there was a lot of grant funding that was kicking around prior to the New South Wales state election, and we received a lot of funding in advance for a lot of the works that we've been applying for. So we'll just take you through just the main highlighted items within the finance area. And just to highlight as well, there is a lot of votes and surrenders that we've recognised this month, more or less recognising the grants in advance, as well as deferrals of capital works program coming through. So we'll go through those in the schedules as we move through. In regards to the revenue side of things, main mover there is $8.3 million positive variance coming through. Items is mainly around the receipt of grants in advance. So the economic promotion one was a grant in advance for the Shire-wide branding project, which we've now recognised with some votes. The real estate grant funding was higher by 682, which was again the grant funding in advance. So we've recognised that with our votes. Waste management revenue, I'll get that right, is higher by about $500,000, which is quite good. There's been an increase in our landfill site disposal fees, which was quite significant, of about $300,000, and receipt of also some grant funding in advance. There is an offsetter against that when we come to the operating expenditure, so we'll go through that when we get down to that expenditure item. General purpose revenue is a little bit higher by about $300,000, a little bit extra in funding from the financial assistance grants, as well as a bit lower in pensioner concessions to date. So that always is one that we clear off probably in the next month or so coming through. Town planning is higher by about $100,000, which is quite pleasing. That's developments coming through. So we received additional $100,000 in DA development DA development contributions. So that'll be put away for future investment into the community. Parks and gardens and sporting grounds, also grants in advance from the Resources for Regions projects. Hunter Warbirds aerodrome revenue is lower by about $133K. So more or less it's lower than expected Shire and non-Shire user fees coming through, and the expected attendance at the Hunter Warbirds was lower as well. The next two items are the two main ones that drive the $8 million coming through. The RMS state roads is higher by budget. That number there, the 969, that's incorrect. It should be 1.94 million. Coming through over the last probably 3 months, the Transport for New South Wales has requested us to do a whole heap of work over on the Golden Highway, and they're continuing to ask us to do further works. I've been informed today about 400,000 before the end of June as well. So they've got money in their budgets to actually spend, I'd say, on the roads over there. So we're continuing to come through. So we've recognised the additional revenue in the votes coming through in the papers. And the bottom one there, the local roads grant funding is higher by about $3.8 million. Effectively, that's the road pothole funding. So the government decided to provide it to councils in advance straight up. So we've got $3.2 million to be spent over the next 12 months, as well as the initial pilot program of 600,000, which we've spent to do Murdering Hut Gully coming through. So as you can see, the government was chucking out a lot of money.
Just through you, Mr. Chair. What's the original roads budget for the entire Shire?
In regards
I
to
think it was about
operational,
4. Yeah.
higher than that. So it's more or less around maintenance or capital. You're talking
Maintenance. Yeah.
It's about 4.
Yeah.
It'll be about 4 to 5.
And they've just matched that sort of thing. Lovely. Thank you.
Moving into the next item here, which is the non-operating revenue and expenditure. Our internal fleet hire charges are down at the moment by about 170,000. Effectively, we should see that pick up. Obviously, with Moonam Brook now coming online and being worked by our own guys, so we should see improvements in our internal fleet hires. And gravel from our pits is lower by about 170,000. So we've had reduced material coming from the pits, so we're looking at trying to escalate that with a lot of our capital works programs coming through. A bit of an offsetter against the 8.3 million is higher expenditure side of things, of 2.2 million. Now there's a lot of ups and downs within this area here, and so I'll just take you through them individually. So the admin costs are pretty well lower by nearly $500,000. So that's pretty well primarily savings we've achieved through the administration, either through staff vacancies or not expenditure not required. Economic affairs costs are lower by about 150,000, again, primarily achieved through staff vacancies coming through that we haven't had to fill. Waste operational cost is a higher one, which is nearly $500,000. There's higher costs in regards to the curbside collection, but also the state government levy with the increased land disposal fees coming through. So,
through you, Mr. Chair, just before we get to the waste one, just in terms of the 704K of the 557 and the 147, where it's described as due to staff vacancies. 700K to date is a lot of savings in terms of staff vacancies. Are we able to be productive if we've got that many staff missing?
Yes, we've pretty well covered a lot of those roles internally. Plus also the 704 probably includes also some other cost savings that we've been able to achieve as well.
Like what?
I'd have to take that on notice and come back to you just in regards to that. Moving down through the other areas there. So the waste operational cost, as I said, was higher. The quarry operation costs are lower than budget by about 74,000. Obviously, it's an offsetter against the lower income stream coming through.
Sorry, through you, Mr. Chair, just back on the waste. The higher costs anticipated of 194K on curbside collection and the state government levy, were they both unexpected or just badly budgeted?
Effectively, the first one comes back to being the new FOGO collection. So it was a little bit under budgeted coming through from when we initially brought that on tap, but it's a great initiative, so that it's something that we'll have to continue to wear, and we'll monitor that coming through into the current year's budget. The state government levy is just purely increased revenue coming into the landfill sites. So that's you got an offsetter against it with the additional revenue streams. Okay, moving down to the Hunter Warbirds costs there. So they're high by about $190,000 at the moment. So the costs were higher than anticipated with our operational costs out there. So effectively, we've got $190,000 overspend. The RMS state roads, as you can see with the 1.9 million additional, we've got 1.5 in additional expenditure as well. So obviously we've been doing the work and we've been spending the money. And overall, the maintenance budgets for roads, they're high by about 620,000. Now, some of that relates to the advanced funding we've just received for the pothole funding coming through, plus also a lot of the flood damage that we've had, which we're claiming back from transport. So we're just waiting on approval for that to come back through transport.
Through you, Mr. Chair. So what kind of percentage are we looking at of that 623,000 that may be recouped through flood grant funding?
An initial look at the actual numbers, we're up to about nearly $750,000 in costs. So it's pretty well the overspends that's there.
And also just back on the warbirds, there's no detail there for what is associated with those operational high costs. I like the little description because it explains what the
Yeah, predominantly
Yeah.
it relates to labour costs out there, plus also just the normal operation costs. We've got the cafe now running out there, so there's additional costs which weren't initially put into the initial budget as well.
I think I've asked for it before, but I was wanting a breakdown of what the cost revenue is for the cafe.
Yep, we
That'd be
can
great.
take that on notice
Thank you.
and provide that if you like. That's fine. Moving into the capital expenditure side of things. So as you can see here, we're a little bit overspent to date, about $650,000. The main projects coming through at the moment, overall, the 14 bridge replacement program is higher by about nearly $200,000. There's no change to the contract value. It's just the timing of the actual project and its progression through the system. Cameron's Bridge approaches, they were higher by $270,000. So we're reallocating some of those costs to Rickle Road. So that will happen over the course of the next month. Merriwall footpath extension, it's lower than budget by about $290,000. It's just been a slight delay. It's just behind schedule slightly. So works are continuing on that and hopefully we'll be finished before the end of this financial year. The Murdering Hut Gully Road from Main Road 62. So we've done the heavy patching of the 400 metres of the road section out there that's funded by the pothole repair program. So that's been a good win for the people commuting between the Scone and Merriwall. With Main Road 62 also, with Sophia Creek Bridge to Kewen, we've extended the resealing of the pavement area out there. So it's a bit higher by budget by about $300,000. That will pretty well be covered by grant funding to come through for that. Main Road 105, the Gundy Road, the project is lower by about $180,000. It's just the timing of really costs. We've had the sealing invoices coming in later than we anticipated. So we're just waiting on those final costs. Victoria Street is lower by about $250,000, which was quite a good win. So the project came in under budget. So we're just waiting on the final costs before we do any votes. And the last two there, the water mains renewal program was higher by about $330,000. So that program has pretty well come to a finalisation. So we've got another mains renewal program happening over the course of the next probably 3 months into next financial year. And our sewer projects are lower by about $800,000. So our sewer program is mainly reactive. So obviously our sewer network has been holding together pretty well at this point in time.
So through you, Mr. Chair, I get the reactive bit, but if we've got 883 available, should we not do proactive things instead of reactive things with that budget?
Yeah, so we've actually done our CCTV works. We've done relining works as well. So we've done proactive stuff coming through. A lot of this was mains replacements, which after the CCTV identified that we didn't have to do the mains replacements. So the 800,000 will just go back into the sewer fund. The general fund doesn't have any access to that money.
Good, thank you.
So overall, when you add all those little numbers together, it comes back to the $5.1 million positive variance to budget. Moving down onto page 7, here the variations that we've got coming through on the coming schedules all result back to nil. And the bank funds and investment report, pretty well our funds are 35 million at the moment, which is $34.5 million in investments held coming through. Obviously,
So-
that's got a little bit of a pump from the advanced grant funding.
Through you, Mr. Chair. So I take from that that's 690K in the daily cash management account. Is that
Pretty well
accounted
in
for
our,
there?
in
Right,
our
okay.
normal working accounts and so forth. Yeah, yeah. We can never get every last cent into the investments, obviously. Moving into our capital expenditure report, here you'll see that we've got a revised program now after we've done a lot of review of our capital works program and the timing of the delivery of that program. It's reduced down to $23.5 million from the $51.9 million originally. So as you'll see that there'll be a lot of votes happening in regards to the capital works, deferring a lot of the projects. And a lot of those were the main projects that we thought may have kicked off, like Main Road 358, like Moonam Brook, earlier than anticipated. So effectively, when you're looking at those ones, that's pretty well $8 million of it.
So with the deferral, because as I was going through the following pages, there's a lot that's being deferred. Why are those things being deferred?
Predominantly around timing, availability of contractors, availability of materials through pipes and everything in that regards, like for drainage and everything on the roads. But also there's deferrals based on waiting for tender documents to be evaluated, go through the process and actually start work. We thought a lot of the actual the tendering would have started earlier. However, the funding deeds didn't come back as early as what we anticipated. So we're just waiting on those funding deeds to happen, especially with Main Road 358. We've been waiting on the funding deed to come back from the funding bodies. And we anticipate to do $5 million worth of work this year, which we won't do. That's just an example. So as you can see, based on the year-to-date expenditure, so the year-to-date expenditure number should be $9.9 million. We had a few problems with our agenda when we were bringing it all together. Things not saving in there, unfortunately. So it was $9.9 million, which effectively comes back to the 41.97% overall of the capital works program. So just moving down through into the schedules that we have at the moment through 10 through to 13. Overall, we have, as you can see, a lot of votes and surrenders coming through, which effectively narrow out to zero at the end of the grand total on page 13. And then
Just through you, Mr. Chair, back to page 8, looking at reporting systems to ensure fit for the future. Is that data and metrics accessible that you can look at where we're up to with the fit to the future benchmarks?
Yeah, they're actually reported in the annual report, as well as the financial statements as well.
Okay. So is there the metrics set out of what the fit for the future is?
It's pretty well 7 ratios effectively coming through.
There's 10 ratios in total. I think 7 of them are financial ratios. And the only one that we haven't met in the last 2 years is the operating ratio. All the others have been met. Sorry.
The operating ratio, as well as the own source revenue.
The what?
The own source. So where the council generates its own revenue outside of grant funding. And obviously with a lot of the grant funding that's kicking around, it's very, very difficult to achieve at the moment.
Yeah. So is there like a bit of a summary doc that I could get on what those 10 ratios are and what it is currently?
If you look in the financial statements that's on the website, they're in the back side of that. There's ratios in regards to the annual financial statements, as well as ratios in regards to the infrastructure reports. So that's the special schedules. So put Mike back on. So obviously, as you can see on these pages coming through from page 14 through to 18 are all the votes and surrenders that we've put through the system this month to more or less get ready for the Depop itself. So deferring a lot of projects into next financial year, so the works can commence on those projects.
So could you just remind me what RA stands for?
Restricted asset.
restricted asset.
Yep. So there's a little table right down the bottom on the page 18 where I've tried to get all the little acronyms coming through.
I had a question about IPWO, but thank you. Thank you.
So just moving on from that, more or less the next schedule there is pretty well our bank and investment, as you can see, with all the funding that we received, the big spike going back up in February there. The investment schedule that we are holding at this point in time, so that's the $34.5 million. And then your capital expenditure summary. So this more or less drags all the capital expenditures in, and this pretty well highlights where a lot of our votes have come through, and votes and surrenders have come through in regards to our capital works program.
Through you, Mr. Chair. I love the page on the investments held. Could we have the same page for loans?
Yes.
That would be great.
Not a problem.
Same kind of breakdown,
Yep.
just to have one to see
Yep.
the other. That'd be
Not
great.
a worry at
Thank
all.
you.
We provide that in the actual quarterly numbers, but I can do it every month. That's not a drama at all. As you can see, on page 31, the surrenders that we've got coming through from the capital works program is $13 million. So as you can see, that's dropped down the actual amount of our revised budget. And then coming through, that's just our high level report on surpluses and deficiencies from all the service areas within the council. Any further questions?
Just will quickly ask the Westpac cash management, the at call account there.
Yep.
That must be it. That's a new one, is it?
No, that's the one we hold. So a lot of our money will go into the cash management account when we get the grant funding. We transfer between our working account and the cash management account just for cash flow purposes. And it's rather high on this that month because effectively we got the grant funding right at the end of February.
Sure. So that's bumped that graph up there.
Correct. Yeah.
Cool. All right. Have we got any more questions, comments on this recommendation, councillors? If not, can I have a mover, please? A mover, a seconder. Councillor Flaherty, thank you. All those in favour? Aye. Passed. And we'll move on to the next business item, which is corporate 4.2, the Airport Management Committee. You want to look at anything there? Have we got any questions or comments from councillors on?
I'll just ask, do we have any preliminary numbers for the weekend just gone, the public holidays?
Through you, Mr. Chair, I've only got a text message from the coordinator out there as to how the weekend went. So that's sad. We'll close Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday figures. There was about 450 over the 3 days or thereabouts visitation. So good visitation over the weekend.
Will we be getting those weekly breakdown visitation figures at any point? I know I've asked lots of times and been promised.
Yeah, I've sent it to you this morning, councillor. Yeah.
Oh, fantastic.
Just
Thank you.
the ticket sales for the aviation centre.
Yeah, just generally looking at that. No, another question. I noted in the minutes when I read them online, can't place it right here, that apparently figures for the airport were incorrect. Oh, here we go. Yes. And so I'm just wondering what figures are incorrect. I think I've sent this through to you, Wayne. So have you got an answer for that as yet?
Pretty well, I sent back on the email. I just wanted clarity around what numbers were we talking about? Yeah,
Okay, we'll tic tac on that. Thank you.
Probably the only figures I can think. Councillor, can you actually point me to the where you're referring to?
So
if
page
you-
69, the general manager advised that context and some figures were incorrect. I'm just wondering which figures were incorrect that you were talking about there.
So that some of those were in regard to the radio interviews, your own blog report, some of those were incorrect.
Yeah,
And
so
s-
that's what I'm wanting to know, what ones are incorrect.
Yep, we've, it's probably easier that we send that around because there was incorrect statements and incorrect figures. Mr. Phelps has given me the correct numbers.
Great, because they were all drawn from council figures. So I'm interested to know if they have changed between time of me seeing them and time of me reiterating them, if and how they change. So
No.
I'll take that up with Wayne then.
Yeah, we'll send the correct figures.
All right, we'll take that on notice. Any further questions, comments? Do I have a mover? No. Councillor Burns. And Councillor Mackenzie, second. All those in favour? All right. We'll move on to responses of previous questions. Have we got any comments or discussion on previous questions here? I think Mr. Burns might have been the only one involved here. Happy? I'll move on that. Councillor Flaherty, Councillor Mackenzie, and all those in favour. All right. Any further questions, comments, or items? There being none, I'll call this meeting closed at. I will. We have got a yellow little green. Could I have a mover to move into confidential, please? Move Councillor Burns, second Mackenzie. All those in favour. We could